You practice the mechanics in the follower dungeons, you know the pulls, you understand the routes, you've got the basics down. But follower mode can't teach you 3 critical things you need to know about Mythic Plus. So here's the system breakdown that nobody gives you. What happens when the timer starts counting, why the deaths matter at different key levels, and why Mythic Plus is way less punishing than the forums make it sound. Let's fix the gaps that follower mode left. Mythic Plus is literally just dungeons with 2 additions, a timer and a scaling difficulty. That's it. You're running the same dungeons you've practiced, but now there's a countdown clock and the enemies hit harder. So the timer varies by dungeon. Most give you around 30 minutes or so, depending on the length and complexity. Your goal is to beat the final boss before the timer expires. If you do, your key upgrades. If you don't, it drops a level. We'll talk about what that actually means here in a minute. You also need to reach a specific enemy count percentage number. And while that might sound daunting, it's not as bad as it seems. Think of it like filling a progress bar by killing enemies. Different enemies are worth different amounts towards that bar, so you don't really have to kill everything in the dungeon, just enough to hit 100% before you finish. Most dungeons are designed that you hit the percentage naturally if you're just following the normal path. There may be some variations. You might have to skip some. You might have to pull extra packs here or there. Not a big deal. But that's the entire system. Timed dungeon runs, scaling difficulty, and you gotta make sure you hit the percentage. Everything else is just details. All right, so let's talk about that timer because that's where most of the anxiety comes from. So how much time do you get per dungeon? It varies based on dungeon complexity, dungeon length, how many bosses are in that dungeon. For example, Arakara, you got 30 minutes. Tazavesh, Streets of Wonder, a little more complex, a little more running around in that one. You got 39 minutes. Here's how it starts. Somebody uses their keystone, and it triggers a 10-second countdown. At the end of that 10 seconds, the timer starts. So it's important to do all your buffing, strategy talk, discussions, things like that before the key gets activated. Because once it starts, it ain't stopping. So what happens when the timer expires? Here's the critical point. Nothing catastrophic happens. Right? The dungeon doesn't suddenly end. You don't get teleported out. You can still finish the dungeon and still get credit for it. What happens is the key gets depleted. It gets dropped down from, if you were running a 4, it's now a 3. That's it. The percentage requirement fills automatically as you kill enemies. Most groups will hit 100% just naturally if you're following the normal route. You'd actively have to skip large packs to not meet the requirement. But the real question, with the timer and the percentage and the enemies hitting harder, it's not asking, can you do this dungeon? You've already proved you can do the dungeon in follower mode. What it's asking is, can you do it efficiently? And at lower key levels, +2 to +4, say, the timer's generous enough, you've got breathing room. So if you miss a few interrupts here and there, or you didn't quite pull all the percentage, maybe you died a couple times, you've got breathing room. The timer tightens up as the key level increases, but when you're starting out, you can make mistakes and still finish the dungeon comfortably. Now let's talk about deaths, because this is where the system gets slightly more punishing, but way less than you think. So in +2 and +3 keys, deaths don't have any effect on your timer. 0 penalty. You can die, respawn at the last waystone, and run back to your group. The only consequence being, whatever DPS you may have lost in your time running back. Now, once you start doing +4s up through +11, each death costs you 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Not 5 minutes. 5 seconds. A single avoidable mechanic will cost you 5 seconds. That's totally recoverable. +12 keys and up, deaths cost you 15 seconds. But let's be honest, if you're running +12s, you're way beyond my help. If you're still worried about, the death penalty thing, let's do some math on it. If you're at a +4 key and you have a 35-minute timer, your group would need to die 42 times to fail purely from death penalties. 42 deaths. You're not dying 42 times. Nobody's dying 42 times. You'll fail the timer from bad pulls or bad routing long before death penalties become a problem. Admittedly, bad pulls, bad routes, they're an excellent contributing factor to dying. So it's a vicious cycle, but it's one you can easily recover from. So here's what actually happens. You die once or twice learning mechanic, 10 seconds. You pull an extra pack by accident, maybe 30 seconds of time lost. You still have 34 minutes and 30 seconds to complete the dungeon. The death penalty exists to encourage you to learn from your mistakes and give you a sense of progression. It's not there to punish normal learning curves. And at the keys you'll be starting at, +2s, +3s, it literally doesn't exist. What makes a +5 harder than a +2? Well, it's two things: enemy stats and affixes. We're going to talk about enemy stats first. At +2, there's a 0% modifier for enemy health and damage. But as you can see here, at a +5, the enemy's got 31% more health, and they're hitting you 31% harder. So what this means is the pulls are going to take longer, the enemies are going to hit harder, but the mechanics don't change. The boss still has all of the same abilities, just a little more punishing if you don't get out of the way. Affixes. Or is it affixes? I've always heard affix. Anyway, here's where it gets interesting. In +2s and +3s, you're dealing with timer, the percentage, and a little bit of increased enemy stats. No affixes yet. And that gives you time to get comfortable with the pacing and what you can expect for the rest of the keys that you try. Once you hit +4 keys, that's when affixes come into play. There are currently 4 affixes that rotate weekly. On top of the affixes, from +4 to I think +11 is where they, or +12 is where they stop. There's 2 buffs that the enemies can get. One is fortified, one is tyrannical. I forget which is which. One of them will make the enemies stronger, and the other one makes the bosses stronger. And if you don't like the affixes, well, start running +12 keys, because they disappear. Oh, but +12 and up, you have both tyrannical and fortified on all the enemies, so good luck. The takeaway from this is this. The scaling, the enemies hitting harder, all that, it doesn't introduce any new mechanics that you've never seen. It just makes the existing ones that much more punishing if you screw them up. So if you learn to dodge the swirlies in follower mode, you'll still dodge them in Mythic Plus. It just kills you faster if you don't. And remember, at +2 and +3, when you're first starting out, there's no affixes, not fortified, tyrannical, just you, a timer, mechanics that you've already practiced. All right, we should talk about bricking, because this seems to scare everybody way more than it should. What is bricking? Well, it means you didn't make the timer. Your key drops 1 level. It's called depletion. It may sound scary, but it's really not. Your +4 key is now a +3 key. And you can run it again immediately. There's no lockouts, no cooldowns. There's no penalty, aside from, instead of getting a +5 key from a 4 key, you now have a 3 key. That's it. You still get your loot. You still get credit for the dungeon. The only thing you're losing out is an upgrade to your key. But here's the secret. Everybody bricks keys. Literally everyone. I've lost count how many times I've bricked Ecodome. I remember one time it happened, we missed our percentage and had to go pull some trash after downing the last boss. It's not unusual, it happens. But then we wiped on trash after beating the final boss. So yeah, bricking happens to everyone, and sometimes it's absolutely ridiculous. So the difference between players new to Mythic and the guys running +17 keys isn't that the +17 runners never brick. It's that they've bricked enough times to know that it's not a big deal. Your key drops a level, and you run it again. You learn from your mistakes, and you move on. So anyway, that's the Mythic dungeon system in a nutshell. There's plenty more you can learn, but that's the basics. It's not scary. Just go do it. I mean, if you want to know more, if you think I left something out, by all means, let me know down in the comments. But as always, thanks for watching.